Welcome to The Hype Within, exploring journeys of authentic leadership and growth. On the show, tech leaders will share their stories of developing their leadership skills and challenges they faced along the way. You'll learn about their approaches to self-reflection and personal growth, and how they've been able to build a foundation of authenticity that has propelled them to success. I'm your host, Hannah Jacover, B2B marketing leader turned leadership and executive coach. Are you ready to get hyped up? Let's dive in. Hey leaders, today we are here with my friend Kaylee Edmondson. Kaylee is the VP of Revenue R&D at Refine Labs. How's it going, Kaylee?
I can't express enough how happy and excited I am to be sitting with you.
Likewise, Kaylee and I feel like I can say we go way back. It feels like it, and it probably hasn't been that long, but we connected while Kaylee was at Chili Piper and just have been able to do some fun stuff together, some webinars, some podcasts. We're on the Chili Piper advisory board together. So it's been really fun watching Kaylee grow in her career and also just exchanging the ideas. And I know she's going to have some great things to share today.
Can't wait. Let's get into it.
Amazing. Okay, so give me a little introduction about yourself, especially interested in like, what the heck does this title mean? Revenue R&D. We can focus it really like around your leadership journey. And maybe if you can, give us a summary of your leadership style.
Ooh, okay. What a great intro prep. So hi, I'm Kaylee. As Hannah said, currently at Refine Labs, have had a series of careers in primarily demand gen roles, always in B2B SaaS, typically sales-led motion SaaS, early stage startups. Like I really love getting in like just pre-Series A or post-Series A when there's like nothing going on and like nobody knows what marketing looks like or how it should take shape. All of those types of things. I'm like, that's what I'm really attracted to. And that's where I've spent the majority of my career. Leadership style. Let's talk about leadership style. So I feel like this is maybe like the most common question that people ask me when I'm like interviewing for a new role or interviewing to hire someone new on my team. And I think that I align most with what's called a transformational leadership style. I think because I'm attracted to joining companies so early stage, it normally means that I am a leader, I guess by title, but like I functionally don't have anyone underneath me, which means I am doing the work. And I always seek an opportunity where I can get in, get my hands dirty, build the programs and the functions that actually work for that specific brand, and then hire a team around me to go and scale those programs. But it's important to me, and maybe it's because of the type of role I'm in or the type of businesses or brands that I'm attracted to, that I have my hands dirty. That always needs to be like some component of my job. And that aligns really well with leading by example, which is the transformational leadership style. I think there are a couple of other components that go into that, like challenging the process. I think in general, I am normally attracted to challenger brands. I am really attracted to brands that have a rebel brand archetype. Chili Piper for sure. Refine Labs, of course, does as well. That's probably like some ethos of just how I am as a creature as well. Like I really love to challenge the status quo of myself, of our brands, of marketing programs, and of course, of anybody that I'm leading or managing. Anyways, I think that all like sums up nicely into like a transformational leader. So I think I'd identify that way.
I love that. And we've gotten a lot of like servant leadership, which is, I feel like the most common that you see out there. And I love hearing something different, transformational leadership style. I also think because it really speaks to you truly transform not only organizations as a leader, but people as well. Like when people work with a transformational leader, they come out on the other side as different humans and are completely inspired by that type of leader, which is, I think it's inspiring and it's really a great leadership style to have.
Yeah, I know it's interesting too, because I think that there's a component of it too that like, let's be real, mostly for my career, I have been marketing to marketers. And while that is so good for all the obvious reasons that like you can build a strong network, you have a great tribe, you're marketing to people who have the same struggles that you do. And in a way you can market your product effectively, tell that story and help them do their job better. The help them do their job better is like a little bit grounding, which is helpful. but we're also not curing cancer, solving, for the most part, real world problems. So being able to help others get better at their own career is something that's very centering in me and helping me validate what I'm doing for my 9-to-5 grind.
Yep. And I always say this stat, only 10% of people are naturally good leaders. And we learn the rest of it, right? We adopt and we learn based on our experiences and our beliefs and our inspirations. And to that point, I'm curious, what has been your greatest inspiration or influence in your leadership journey?
Oh, that's so good. I'll say this. I've been very fortunate in my career to work with such good leaders that truly lead by example. Don't get me wrong, there have been a couple sour apples in there too, but for the most part, everyone that has ever managed me or led me in some capacity, even if it's not a direct line of management, maybe it's a functional peer that I don't report directly into, but they're still leading by example. Honestly, I think your point is so spot on, that you learn how to be a leader from those around you and from your own experiences. And I take all of that. It's so easy to miss the magnitude of things that are happening in the moment. Much easier to reflect on it in your career or your journey. And so a lot of the things that I find myself rehashing or talking about now, that I'm oh, this was a moment. In that moment, I had no idea. So I think reflection is a huge part of it, but I've been surrounded by really brilliant people, both that I'm let me think about some of the characteristics. I really love leaders that give me enough rope to succeed or fail, right? So it's ownership and autonomy is huge for me. I've been very lucky to be surrounded by people that lead in that way, which I think hopefully shows up in the way that I lead as well, and the way I show up for my peers even. I think that leading by understanding that you don't know everything. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It's so powerful. And I think every person I've ever reported to has led with that characteristic, being part of shining their light on how they're going to lead and build and run their team. And I don't know, I just think it's all about the people you surround yourself with. It's also a lot of power to be able to look and say, this leader leads a little differently. Let me empathize with why I think they're leading that way, and see if I can understand if it's there's a lot as a leader you have to take on, people management, program management in roles that have been managing me and that I am now managing. We are tied to revenue, which is critical for the success and overall health of the business. So it's a high stress role, all those types of things. I think it's when you see a leader that's maybe operating in a way that you wouldn't naturally operate, it's easy to be judgmental and say, oh, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. It's harder to take a step back and say, okay, let's think about, what does this look like in their shoes? What are they going through today? How many board meetings are they going to? What's the health of our business look like? Maybe that's why they're showing up this way, to help you ultimately figure out how you're going to lead and how you're going to react in certain situations and scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And one thing you mentioned earlier on that I think just tied into what you were saying is your own reflection process. And I mean, even what you were just saying is being able to reflect on other leaders that may be leading in a different way that you may or may not agree on or with, but instead of judging, you're reflecting. I'm curious, what do you need to have a successful reflection process in place for yourself?
Let me admit that in early days in my career, I did not have this, right? Which is why I say that in the moment, it's hard for me to miss hey, this is a milestone moment. This is something you're going to look back on and think, now that you're a leader, now that you're in these shoes, wow, I get it. It's almost now that I'm a mom, I look back at things my mom said to me and I'm oh, I get it. Totally understand. I am now becoming her. So it's kind of that, but for business. Early in my career, I did not, and wish that I would have prioritized a better reflection process. Now, I write it all down. I block off my calendar for the first 30 minutes of every day to prioritize reflection, whatever that might mean. Sometimes it means personal stuff, I'm a mom, so lots of mom things happening in my brain at any given point in time. Sometimes something happened the day before that I didn't quite agree with or didn't understand why it mapped out that way at work. Maybe I joined a board call, felt absolutely overwhelmed and wow, that was a poor performance. Not sure we knocked that out of the park. I don't normally do a lot of immediate reflection because it's never productive for me. Maybe others have found a way. I'd love to learn from others. For me, it's like the secret is to sleep on it, wake up the next morning, fresh cup of coffee. I've got my kiddos to school. The house is quiet. Journal, write it down. I tried digital journaling for a while. It didn't work for me. It's something about the pen in hand that works really well. 30 minutes. That's what I take. It helps me. Writing it down is like clearing my train of thought. It helps me process and organize how to react to what happened, how to potentially plan for it better the next time around, or shift it to be more favorable for whatever our ideal outcome is for the next go around.
And did you all hear that? She blocks her calendar. She blocks her calendar and she writes it down. Like, please.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if that's like transformational knowledge, but I think like taking this space is like not something that was ever encouraged, honestly, like early in my career. Like, no way. You got to have butts in seats. This is back in the day when you're in an office, 8 o'clock. If you're here by 8:05, unacceptable. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of power in this like remote environment that most of us find ourselves in, taking advantage of like that commute transition that you would have normally been in the car to find a way to use that time productively, like journaling or working out or meditating, whatever helps you clear your brain and reflect on the previous day, month, week, whatever your cadence is, I think is like super powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I like that you wait. I do the same because, and for me, I don't know if it's similar for you, but I first have to process and release the emotions that are attached to it. Because if I start reflecting in that moment, I'm not doing it from an objective standpoint. I'm attached to it and I have some emotion that is wound up in there, and it's going to cloud my reflection process, and my judgment is there. Some sort of fear or judgment is there. So I totally agree with your process of waiting until the dust settles and then jumping into it. And when you like have some sleep, some rest in between, like your brain is hard at work, compartmentalizing and processing all of the things that you did that day and your emotions. And then you wake up, and like, that's why you wake up so refreshed with a new day and a new perspective.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. It's the distance, right? Like you need physical distance, time distance, whatever it is, to like get like a little bit less emotional about what happened, right? Whether it's really good or really bad, right? I think that I say this a lot. I romanticize marketing all the time. I'm obsessed with marketing. I look for marketing in every aspect of my day. It's a little insane, but it's my passion. So that's cool. I'm glad that I do this for work. But in that, I have a tendency to go one direction or the other naturally. I either romanticize it, everything's great, peaches and rainbows, this was incredible, right? In the moment, everything feels so good. There's nothing bad that I can pick out of this to make it better next time, whatever that scenario is. Or I join it, I don't immediately feel those endorphins running, and I'm like, oh, this is so bad. I become a very quick negative Nancy. Everything's so bad, da 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 da. Sleep on it, take a step back. We wake up the next morning. It's amazing what you think the next day. Actually, that wasn't that bad at all. Here's some things we can improve upon. You become more solution-oriented and less venting about the problems.
Yes. Yeah. And I think also one thing that you're explaining is just being comfortable with duality. Like we do so much of black and white thinking, and just sitting in duality of two things can be true at the same time. And you're a mom, so you'll understand this, where it's like, I did this thing, I'm a bad mom, where it's like, no, I'm having a bad day, I'm not at my best, and I'm still a good mom. So two things can be true at the same time. And I think that when you're in something, when you're so close to it and you're not looking at it and holding it out in front of you, you have a tendency to go swing one way or the other.
This is why Hannah is the expert in the room here, because I'll say some mumbo jumbo that's not eloquent, and then you're like, oh yeah, duality. And I'm like, oh yeah, I would have never described it that way, but that's definitely what it is. Much more simplistic and direct way to describe whatever I tried to say before.
I think I learned that in therapy, so don't give me the credit. Okay. I want to hear, because your career trajectory, right? You've gone from that individual contributor level all the way to a director and now in a VP role. Where was like that turning point or breakthrough for you in your leadership journey that kind of allowed you to like have that significant growth?
Oh, that's so interesting because I think there are a lot of angles that you could break this down on. Like there's a lot of variables to be considered. And depending on how I or you or anybody listening defines like a breakthrough, the variables could be very different. So like, let me take a stab and then maybe you'd be like, oh, but from the outside, maybe it's this. I think that my biggest breakthrough moment for my career really though was when I fell in love with who I was marketing to, what I was marketing, how I was writing about it, getting close to the customers. Like for me, and specifically, I am in a revenue generating, like accountable to revenue role. So I understand maybe this isn't applicable to everyone, but for me, it was this passion, this spark of like, okay, now I am obsessed. This is a roller coaster. I'm on the ride. I want to be in the front seat. It was like a feeling, like an emotional attachment to like what I was doing, which truly, in case it's not completely obvious from the outside looking in, happened for me when I was at Chili Piper. I found myself early stage, all the things I talked about in the beginning, right? I was early stage. I was a founding marketing member. I had a director title at the time, but I was the only person doing demand gen. So I was literally just figuring out what the ship needed to look like, what our programs look like, what's our budget, building a forecast, like everything, anything and everything. There were 3 of us. It was dream team, like early stage. There was startup buzz. Like it was so good, right? So those are all the things that I know now, like fill me up with energy. Other things totally suck the energy out of me. And early days at Chili Piper was like just magic for me. I was surrounded by a leadership team that supported me, gave me all the rope I could possibly stand to fail or succeed, trusted me with my crazy ideas. Like it was just truly like everything that I needed in my puzzle at that moment in my career came together. People listening might be like, oh, but like you were just a director. Now you're a VP. Like when you think about leadership, like I guess the outside looking in turning point would have been this move to break through the ceiling from a director to a senior director at Chili Piper and then ultimately a VP here at Refine Labs. Like I guess the external ceiling looks like it would have been this move here to Refine Labs. For me though, I find a lot of joy in my output, feeling that buzz, making those connections with customers, seeing their transformation, back to transformation. Maybe there's like so many red threads to this call, but there's a lot of that fills me up with like unlocking growth in my journey. And I'm so early on right now at Refine Labs. I'm barely 6 months in that I don't know that I would count this VP role yet as a breakthrough moment for my career. So for me, actually going from my campaign monitor days into this role at Chili Piper, I could feel my career speeding up. That's when I started understanding the value of building a peer network, a group of friends that work in this crazy, exciting industry alongside me that could question me and give me constructive criticism and give me feedback on campaigns that we're launching. Like all of those types of things give me tons of energy. I had never unlocked that before my Chili Piper days. And that has literally step changed my entire career.
Yes. Okay. I have a couple things to unpack there because you had some goodness. The first is I feel like with getting close to the customer and getting excited about telling that story, I don't know, like for me, there's almost that shift of being able to then do some really interesting storytelling that is close to revenue. Like that shift of I'm not thinking about just doing these tactics and like reaching my individual goals. I'm thinking about the customer and I'm thinking about the story that I can tell that is going to help them. And in my opinion, that's what a CEO wants to hear is a marketer who can tell that story and cares about the customers because that is the closest thing to revenue. That is your revenue. And so when you can have that impact and that like switch flips of, oh, I'm going to be customer obsessed now. I just feel like it's like a natural, it is, to me, it does sound like a natural breakthrough.
Yeah. And I think so. I think that, and maybe those things are more intertwined or connected than may seem obvious, like from the outside looking in, that like the moment you become customer obsessed is also the moment that you unlock opportunities for your own career growth and your trajectory. I think that breaking through this director ceiling is a real thing in this space. I talk to so many, like demand gen is my niche. So like if you're listening and you're not demand gen, sorry, you're having to hear this word so many times, but that's the space that I've surrounded myself with. And that's the network that I talk to all the time, whether I'm talking to them for feedback on myself or I am trying to provide them with feedback for their career growth. Like everyone gets like stuck at this ceiling of director, and it's unclear of how people can build a moat around themselves to make it obvious, either on their next career jump, if they're going to a new job at a new brand, or if they're trying to stay in-house and earn that promotion internally. Like making that jump is perceived to be really difficult. Like just based on the data points that I have available to me, it seems like there's a lot of perception of what a VP should be, from executive down, from the co-founder, the CEO, etc. And there's a lot of push, or like this generation of us that are coming up now that are like, wait, why is this your perception of what a VP should be? Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's how much revenue I'm driving. Like whatever your angle is to try and earn that seat. And there's some type of misalignment happening here. We also know it goes without saying that it's really difficult for marketers to earn a seat at the executive table. And I think that plays into the mix as well.
Yeah, I have had lots of conversations around this with my coachees because a lot of them are at that level and they do want to move into VP seats and sit at that executive table. And it's that exact same conversation where it's like, I'm not an executive. I'm not a VP. I'm not a leader. And we have to go through the process of like really breaking down that limiting belief that like, what is your definition of that then in the first place? And what are the qualities of a VP or an executive that you admire? And soon they kind of see like, oh, that was kind of bullshit. Like that definition came from my experiences or assumptions that I'm making, when in reality, I look at these people that are VPs or executives that I admire, and here are the things that I think actually makes them an executive. And then they connect the dots and they say, wait a second, I have those things. I can do those things. I am those things. I am an executive or leader or VP or whatever it is. And it's amazing, to use your word, transformation, and just that like repositioning of their thoughts on it.
Yeah. Isn't that so, like, you should run a study on that. I think that's so interesting though, that like, yeah, I have a lot of data points. You have a lot of data points. This is a real issue that maybe it's marketers. I can't speak to any other like career ladders because I don't have those personal experiences or the network, honestly, to speak on it, but not feeling deserving of climbing the ladder, not feeling, honestly, maybe we could go here, maybe you have more insights than I do, but most marketers are female. We already know there are plenty of stats out there that back that females don't apply for jobs they think they're not 100% qualified for. They don't take those aggressive opportunities to say, hey, I deserve this seat, right? Maybe that ties into the overall perception that it's really difficult for marketers to earn a seat at the table at the CMO or executive level, whatever that looks like for your brand. And also probably to break through this director to VP glass ceiling.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there is a lot of it that is just based on our social constructs and the way that our society operates. Like you think of it, I like to do a lot of systems thinking in these cases, just because it also like, it's not just you. It's not just you. Like these rooms, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color or part of an underrepresented group, these rooms were not built for you. These conversations, these seats, like those were not made for you. And so you look at a lot of the people who are successful and you may look up to, and they're probably white men. And another thing is too, I think that it's also generational. I think that we're seeing this generational shift right now of like millennials and Gen Z want to do things very, very, very differently. And there's a lot of disruption happening. And I think that you start to see like millennials moving up the ladder, and they're going to do things just the way that they want. Like you said, disruption and rebellious. And I think a lot of that has to do with like reclaiming identity and reclaiming like, no, like I have played this game and had to like pretend to be this like professional for so many years. And now I just want to be myself and do what I'm good at. And I'm going to go do that.
Yeah, couldn't say it better. True. Like 100% agree. That was like such an unexpected turn to this session. But I'm like, no, that's like that's where people should be paying attention and talking about it and having open dialogue, like form that network, build your tribe around you, have these like open, candid conversations about, building a system. I think that's a really powerful way to frame.
Okay, on the topic of disruption, and because I know you like to disrupt and are a rebel, and Refine Labs is like totally does things differently. Chili Piper totally does things differently. So I know you'll have lots of good stories on this one. So thinking about disrupting traditional leadership, what ways do you seek out, or how do you do that? And like, is there an instance that you sort of made like a very like unconventional move or decision that raised eyebrows?
Oh, let me like talk through it and maybe we can like find some interesting points. I think that as you're asking the question, my mind immediately goes to like my personal life before I was working any of this, right? Like starting at the beginning, I think is obviously relevant to everyone. It shapes literally who you are and who you become in the early days of your life. And I was born and raised, an only child, me, my mom, my dad, super simple family structure. In rural America, we lived in a very small, very rural town in Tennessee. I still live here today. And I was the first person in my family to go to college. So truly walked in with no understanding of what I was really doing here or like what I should major in. All of these things were very foreign concepts to me. And I think that in and of itself was like pretty disruptive just for my mold, right? I was given this very specific mold. My parents were both very hardworking, blue collar workers their entire career and still are. Didn't have the opportunity to go to college. I was like kind of out of my mold. I had no idea what I was really doing and figuring it out in real time. That was disruptive. I remember the day that I told my mom I was going to major in marketing, which, it's like telling your mom that you're going to major in marketing. Like, I have no idea what she even thought I was saying, but I'm sure that she's thinking like I was going to be a telemarketer or I was going to run somebody's like Twitter or something super random like that. And she's like, oh my, good luck. Like, I don't think that's going to be good for you. But I mean, but she's also like, I have no idea how, like, what to tell you to do, because she was kind of out of her element too. So I didn't really have a network at the time to be like, is this okay? Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I even moving in the right direction? I have literally no idea. And then when I got out, I joined this healthcare company, born and raised in Nashville. Nashville's got a huge healthcare hub here. There were a lot of jobs in healthcare. So I started working for this healthcare company as a marketing coordinator, which was like a glorified assistant. I was literally just like picking up the loose ends for anybody that was on the team, which was great exposure at the time for me to figure out, morally, I don't want to do marketing for healthcare. Like, that seems really weird to me. Landed this opportunity at a SaaS gig, and it just like unlocked so much for me. It was disruptive in the sense that my family had no idea, and probably still to this day, like, doesn't really know what I'm doing, but they know that it brings me so much joy that now they're like 100%, right? They get it. They're on board. They support me. In early days, they were concerned. And I think that's like, to be disruptive is to step outside of your mold. It makes often the people that care about you the most, that are the closest to you, are concerned. They express concern because it's different. It's a pattern interrupter, right? From what they're used to or what they assumed you might do. And anyways, I'm like, the whole thing is like, I think that when I realized you can be disruptive and step change your own career, impacting yourself, your family, those around you in really meaningful ways, it like kind of made me obsessed with taking small risks, which is so funny because in my career, I do love and enjoy taking risks. In my personal life, I am very boring. And so I think it depends on how you want to like show up, right? Maybe you're very risky, whatever that looks like for you in your personal life. And so you want to be more on a trend. You don't want to interrupt patterns at work because you spend more of that risk averse time in your personal life. I don't know. For me, it like all centers in my career. I kind of got that buzz early on when I realized like, oh, I'm really kind of obsessed with this career path, but like no one in my circle at the time understood. And I think that's like kind of brought to life in how I show up for work and the companies I choose to work for. I think it all is about starting small. For me, I want to work for a place and I want to, in general in my life, show up authentically. And that means that I identify as a white female who's super country, born and raised in rural America to really hardworking parents. I'm a wife. I've got 2 lovely children. I'm a mom. And I am candid in the way that I talk. I am authentic in the way that I tell you how I'm feeling. They say my face tells it all. And like, those are all just like attributes of me. And so I want to, and I think everybody should want to, and find a way to be employed by people that support you for every attribute that makes up who you are, right? Early in my career, I had zero concept of what that meant. I wish somebody would have told me that early on. I wish I would have known for those first couple of years, like feeling super lost, that I could have asked for that or been more direct to say, like, this is all the parts of me that I want to be able to show and bring to work. And I also want to be able to like close up shop and be present at home. So I think it's like, that's disruptive. I think in my mind, that's like breaking the mold in any form is disruption. And that's kind of how I've like patterned my own career.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. I think showing up as your authentic self, that is, I always say that's an act of resistance. Like that is disruptive because people don't expect it, especially if you show up that way in a corporate world. People are going to have opinions about it. I'm curious though, like when you're younger, because I went through this process too. When you're younger, like just now you had these really great statements about yourself. Like that's who you are. Like you know who you are. I feel like it takes people a lot of time and remembering and personal work to actually remember who they are and to be able to have these statements about, hey, here's who I am and here's how I want to show up. Do you think that you would have been able to advocate for yourself in the same way, like when you were younger? Like, did you feel like you knew who you were and able to advocate for yourself? Like, I just feel like it's a precursor, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so good. You're such a good interviewer. I feel like we're really peeling back layers of an onion here. I don't normally position myself to talk about my personal life on interviews. I always talk about marketing. So this is like, wow, I feel like we're going really deep here, which is great. I think there's something interesting. And obviously, like, here's my life. So here's how I think that it worked for me. I experienced really tough loss when I was 14. We had no precursors, but my dad passed away suddenly when I was 14. And I feel like when you experience that level of trauma or loss that early in your like formative, like critical years of development, grief makes you grow up. You immediately become probably an immature, but you become some version of an adult in that moment. It's like probably the most defining moment of my childhood is that moment. And I will never forget it. I think about it every day. Like those things are what I think made me step change my growth. Like I literally grew up in that moment, blink of an eye. Mm-hmm. It's just like a very pivotal moment that makes you think like, wow, life is short. We are not here on this earth for very long in the grand scheme of things at all. I don't want to walk through life not being myself. I want to feel accepted and included. I want to build a strong life. I want to have a strong family balance. Like all those things literally come crashing into your brain at one moment. I'm sure others who've experienced anything similar feel the same way, that it's like, wow, this is actually it's not all that serious. I want to ask for what I want. I want to live my life the way I want. I mean, I'm not asking for anything crazy. So it's like, this all seems like realistic things we should be able to like ask for and receive in this world. And I think that's why I think I have those inputs to say, oh, okay, like this is life. I only got 14 years with him, which is not near enough for anyone to have with their parents. Maybe something is similar for me and my children. Like I want to make every minute count. I want to show up for work the way I want to show up. I want to surround myself with incredible people that support me and challenge me. And I want to do the same thing at work. And so if had any of those like pivotal moments in your life, I think that's probably how you identify quickly what you want, what you don't want, how you want to show up, how you don't want to show up. Like those types of things I think come faster when you're forced to grow up faster.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I so appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. And you're so right. Like grief and trauma speeds things up so quickly. And the result of that is really getting close to who you are and remembering like, no. Like, why would I waste my time like going along with this social construct that I don't agree with? And why should I showcase to others that I care about that when I'm here to like live and experience joy and help other people do the same?
Facts. Yeah. Said so nicely. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's what it's about. Like, right? Like I'm a marketing professional, but I'm a human and so is everybody else. And so like some of the points I'd said earlier about empathy and trying to understand instead of judging, like all of that comes when you have a perspective on like, we're not really here for that long, right? Like we're just not here in this form on this planet for that long. And so every day truly matters, and how you show up and how you treat others and how you lead. All of it is like huge impact for you and the world that you've created around you. And so, yeah, wow, we're going deep on this episode today, but hopefully this is helpful to people that are listening.
I hope so too. Any expression of like the vulnerability and authenticity of somebody in a leadership seat is so powerful. It is inspiring to others. It helps people see that like, oh, hey, I can show up as myself too, right? Like it allows for that inspired action to take place. And I think that what you are demonstrating, and this is why I ask people their leadership style before we start, is because you can see it demonstrated throughout the rest of our time together. Is you said you're a servant leader, or you said you're a transformational leader, or you said you're this kind of leader. Let's see how that plays out in our conversation. And I do like truly see that, right? Within your stories, within the way that you show up, like you are showcasing and demonstrating like this is how a transformational leader thinks and talks.
Man, that's good stuff. I didn't know that's why you plant that seed in the beginning, but that's interesting and nice to be affirmed that I self-identify maybe properly.
Yes. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to play my favorite game called Lead or Leave. So I'm going to give you a scenario and you're just going to have to tell me quickly, rapid fire, if you would lead in that situation and like power through it, or if you would leave, tap out. You don't have to necessarily like leave the company, but you're just, that specific situation is not for you as a leader. Are you ready?
I'm bracing for impact. Let's do it.
Okay. The first one is introducing an office-wide game of executive musical chairs to switch leadership roles for a day.
Oh, lead.
Offering employees the option to receive part of their salary in cryptocurrency.
Oh, leave.
Okay. Oh, this one's spicy. A high-performing executive is accused of misconduct, and you must decide whether to keep them on the team or let them go, risking the company's reputation and performance.
Oh, I'll lead, but ask them to leave.
Prioritizing team-building activities over meeting a tight deadline.
Lead.
Okay. Last one. Implementing a 4-day work week.
Oh, lead. I'm so subscribed to this.
Love it. Okay. Now is your opportunity to provide any justification for your answers.
Oh yeah, I don't even know if that needs validation or like additional comment. Like 100%, you should literally walk in other people's shoes like all day. Early on in my career, I joined this startup that was so tiny. There were 19 of us. It was a SaaS startup based in Nashville. It was best times, but it was actually part of our onboarding that you go during your onboarding. We had like a proper 2 weeks of onboarding, which I feel like I haven't gotten at hardly any SaaS company ever. Times were different back then. But you would go and you would sit, there was a little bitty office, you'd go sit in the room with the CS people and you would run through support tickets and understand their day and hear complaints from customers and hear what wins the customers are having. It was so impactful. Same thing, you'd bop over the next day to the sales team, do the same thing. And it set you up for so much success in your role. You got so close to your customers, you understood what all of your peers were working through, what their challenges in their day are. Crazy. Can't recommend it enough. So musical chairs and at exec level, I can only imagine how impactful that would be.
Yes. Yeah. What was it? I saw the other day, I think it was on Dave's podcast where he was talking to somebody and they were saying like, as a CMO, like you should be able to fill in for the CFO if they're out.
Kellogg. Yeah. Dave Kellogg on his podcast. And that was his major takeaway is like, if the CFO is out, you as a CMO should be able to just step right in, not miss a beat.
Mm-hmm. And the executive musical chairs could assist in that.
100%. Okay, so what was the next one?
Let's see. Okay, the misconduct.
I feel like you as a leader should step up. And I mean, you're going to have to handle very difficult, maybe not difficult to that magnitude, but at some point in your career, you will nonetheless handle difficult employees, difficult situations, difficult like scenarios amongst leadership, all of that is possible. And so in examples like that, you need to step up and lead the scenario and do what's best for the business. And honestly, what's best for, depending on what this misconduct was, for the employees that are still going to hopefully stay at this company and ask that executive to leave.
Okay, 4-day work week.
I'm so subscribed to a 4-day work week for so many reasons. One, because I feel like all millennials are, so I'm just going to hop on in that camp. But two, I think that this remote working environment really does allow, if you're working in an environment that's working well, your leadership really trusts you as an adult, trusts you to be grown up, to make great decisions for yourself, for the business, and do your best work. And we all know that can happen. For me, sometimes that happens in the middle of the night. Insomnia is real. I wake up, I have an idea, I need to go jot it down. And that's when I want to do my best work. So like, who cares, right? As long as I'm like able to get my daily duties done during the day and can show up appropriately, blah, blah, blah. If we want to work a 4-day work week and have 4 10s and be off on Friday, that 3-day work week re-energizes us. There are so many businesses and brands that are based out of European countries that are already doing this and have been doing this. And so I think America just needs to like get on board and figure it out.
Yeah, agreed. And there's actual laws that prevent employers from communicating with employees after hours in, I think it's Germany, but I think a couple other countries too.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a good fun fact.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think it's Germany. I can't remember the other countries, but there's multiple countries that do that where like no email, no text after 5 p.m. Otherwise, like it is illegal.
There's a lot of power. And my thing is there's no excuse these days because every platform you're using to distribute comms has a little button that says schedule for later. And it's so powerful because as a leader, and I think this is maybe like a good hot take too, I've worked for so many leaders that now I understand. I'm older, I have children, I'm up at night. Sometimes my brain is working good. So I'm getting things done because that's the time that works for me. That is not the time that always works for my employees. You should never expect your employees to Slack you back, text you back, BM you back, whatever your comms are after hours, because they're probably asleep. They're probably with their family. And I understand that like, just because you send the message doesn't mean they have to respond, but it really does a lot to like your psyche to, if you're like me, you have FOMO, you might have Slack on your phone. You're checking Slack at night for your own like peace of mind so you can go have a restful night of sleep and you just need to like check and make sure everything's good, right? Nothing's on fire. And then you check and, I have a message from my CEO. Whoop, you know what I mean? And your heart rate starts inflating and oh my gosh, now I need to go solve this problem. 5 minutes later, here you are on the couch with your kids, with your laptop. You know what I mean? And that is not a good cycle to be in. So even if that's the ideal time for you as a leader, as a manager, whatever, doesn't mean that you have to send it right now unless it's an actual fire. Schedule it for later so that your team is also resting, recovering, recuperating on their time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Such good point. And I want to highlight this. Notice how she said, my heart rate, right? Like one of the reasons why these things are so important is because you have physiological changes. Like you are activated in those moments that is sending you, in some cases, not always, but in some cases, into fight or flight. Like you're literally dysregulated. Your nervous system is shot in those moments and you are going to be way more prone to burnout. And you're not good at making decisions. You're not good at processing new information and you've ruined your night. And you have to completely regulate yourself to get back to ground zero. I just think as leaders, like you set the tone and use the schedule later button, because even if I've done it where I send it and I'm like, oh shit, and like, I'll just delete it and redo it and schedule it so I don't freak people out. But you set the tone. Like I've worked with leaders where they have said, hey, I know I work late and you don't have to, but you'll see things from me. And that doesn't mean I expect you to be up and responding. But at the same time, it sets the tone and it sets an expectation. And you are not leading by example if you're doing that. And there's ways to do it where you're scheduling and you're just being careful and mindful about how your team is going to perceive that. And also the fact that you can literally trigger them and activate a threat response in their brain and body if that happens continuously. Okay, so I have a question for you around something that's so hot right now. So hot. Do you know what it's going to be?
Well, but I don't know. Like I read it, I guess, but I'm like, did I memorize it? I feel like it's going to have to be like AI. It has to be AI, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
And this will be fun because it's not from a marketing perspective. It's not from like every hot take that we see on LinkedIn right now, which is like, oh, how you can use AI as a marketing team or to do all these things. I want to hear about your angle on AI and leadership. So like, how do you think as we continue to progress down this AI journey, how do you envision like these different technologies transforming leadership and team dynamics?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll go, but you have to respond to this one too, though, because I really want to hear your take. And you're probably a little bit more objective than I am. I'm going to think very like first party data. I feel like you'll probably have a little bit more of a worldly approach to your perspective. For me, I actually think there's a lot of things that you take on when you become a leader. And a lot of that is personnel management. You're managing humans, you're managing their thoughts, you're managing their feedback, like all those types of things that are so important, but also take a lot of cognitive load. There are other things that you're doing as a leader in whatever shape or form that looks like for you that are, hey, we've got to ship this thing. We've got to get this task done. We've got to ship this campaign or launch this website. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. We have to be in meetings. We have to be talking with our customers, whatever the list is, right? So many things. I think that one thing I've actually heard several of leaders in my peer set start saying is that they're leveraging AI already to organize their calendars so that they can meet with their team on their time, so that they can prioritize tasks through AI, not in a way where you're like constantly having to like shift. Like calendar management is crazy, especially when you get to a leadership level. Oftentimes it's hard for you to meet with your team. It's hard to be where they are. It's hard to get everything done, whatever. That's pretty cool. I think that we can like start to leverage AI through your calendar to actually help you reduce some of that cognitive load and spend more time with your team. However that looks, whether that's in person, more team bonding activities, whatever that is, I think finding more ways to be active and present while also still like doing all the things and getting your day job done, it is really impactful. So like that's my first take is like, I actually feel like AI could leverage some of the like mundane tasks that come along with leadership so that you can be a more present leader. Let me think through how else. Maybe you go and then I'll come back on like how else AI could impact leadership.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I totally agree with that. I used Motion.ai and I started using it when I was at Mad Kudu, and it is a lifesaver. And I mean, I will never go back to manually managing and time blocking. And so, like, oh my God, please stop doing that. Everybody, please stop it. There's so many tools. So I think you're right. Like there are so many tools that use AI and machine learning that just will allow us to offload some of those things where the decision making, like I think about the decision making. We make so many decisions every single day. I think it's like 70% of what executives do is decision making. So you need all of that energy to be able to make the decisions that matter. And when you start making little decisions here, you get decision fatigue. And so if you can offload some of those decisions, right? Why does Steve Jobs wear all black every day, the same outfit? Is because it was a decision that he did not want to waste energy on because he had to go in and make big decisions with big impact. And he was saving all of his brain power for those. So thinking about what are the little decisions that I'm making every day that I can offload that I don't have to think about, what tools can help me do that? I mean, I always think of it as like an Ask Jeeves, right? Like it's just such a cool database of information. And yeah, ChatGPT maybe cannot access, only has data up to like what, 2021 or one, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, now there's tools that are accessing the internet via API, and that's not really a blocker anymore. And you can ask it anything. If you are a leader and you don't want to go pick up your leadership book that you read 10 years ago that had something really good in it, but you want to apply that to a situation, you can ask AI. If you want to learn how to communicate with somebody in a better way that's different from you using a framework that is powerful, ask AI. It'll give you 5 different ones. And I'll just say always fact check, right? And actually go to the source and make sure that it's legit and learn about it, actually digest the information. But I just feel like it helps from, or it could be helpful from a communication standpoint if you are not really sure how to approach a situation or how to communicate something or how to wrangle everybody, or you just need new ideas of how to get people on the same page?
100%. I actually think that's a really good point, because like some angles that I already like take with AI for myself is to have AI actually pose the counter argument back to me. I have used this a lot in my current role. I'll like spare some details for anonymity here, but it's so healthy to have arguments and disagreements. And the fact of the matter is, you're hardly ever going to agree on everything with your peers, with your direct reports, with your boss, with your CEO or co-founder of the company. Like everybody's going to come at everything from a different angle. And it's really helpful. I am very type A. I love to plan. I love to model in my head how scenarios might play out so that I can remove some of that bias, remove some of my emotional response, and already have at least an initial thought for like, yes, and this is like a separate way to look at it, or my perspective or whatever. I argue often with ChatGPT today for multiple scenarios in my current gig. And it's really helpful. It helps me plan ahead and understand how others might come at a solution that honestly, maybe I would not have come up with on my own.
That is also a fantastic brainstorming tool. Have you heard of the 6 thinking hats?
No, say more.
Okay, so the 6 thinking hats is a concept that I think his name is Edward de Bono, and I think he's a psychologist, that he developed this process of brainstorming where you essentially assign these hats, and you can do it with yourself or you can do it with your team, but everybody has a different hat, a different colored hat, and each colored hat represents a different way of thinking. So one hat could be, I'm the creative hat. Another hat might be, I am the risk-averse hat. So I'm going to think about all of the risks here and take those into considerations and make sure that I'm bringing arguments to the table that are focused on that. Or I'm the hat that is going to be really optimistic and think about all the opportunities and the upside. So everybody has a different hat, and you could probably do this with ChatGPT. Say,
I was just going to say, I bet that would actually be a more powerful prompt than what I've already been using. So I might install that.
Really interesting. Okay, you got to try it and let me know how it goes. But essentially, it's what you're saying, right? Like you have all these different perspectives, and it allows this like really creative brainstorming to happen. And you get all of these unique perspectives that are centered around certain attributes, I guess, or maybe even like personality types. Like if you have somebody that is going to be more risk adverse, then what would they say about that idea?
I love that. I will report back 100% because now I'm like, that's actually probably a more effective way, because I have been one off. Like imagine a character who has these types of character traits, typically responds like this. I give it a novel to respond to, and I bet it already knows what these 6 hats are, and it would probably process the response and generate the response much faster.
Yeah. I love it. Look at us. We should write a ChatGPT prompt book. Just kidding.
Coming soon.
But what does not need another one of those?
No chance.
Okay, this has been so fun. I'm so happy that you've been on this with me.
It's like a good therapy session, honestly. I'm like, it's just so powerful to like have open, good conversations with others, because the way you even pose questions like really does make me put on a critical thinking hat and reflect on like, oh, why am I that way? Or why did I do that? And all about the power of reflection, and like interviewing, quite honestly, and like chatting with your peers, whether it's recorded or not recorded, is a really powerful way to do that. So I'm like, actually, I feel like I'm getting a lot of benefit from this.
Good. And that's what you get when you do a podcast with a coach. Okay, so last question for our listeners, especially those emerging executives out there that are wanting to maybe make that leap from director to VP like we've talked about, or just thinking about their career trajectory. What resources? Doesn't have to be like a book. It could be an exercise, an experience, something that you found valuable. But what would you recommend for their personal and professional growth?
Something that I also, ironically, learned on a podcast a couple of years back when I got really obsessed with listening to podcasts was the power of career mapping with others. Go outward, look outward into either like a network that you already have, Or, go on LinkedIn and find someone who, from the outside looking in, has a career that you would love to map to. Maybe it's the specific industry they're in, or the type of job they've landed, or maybe their entrepreneurial spirit and they've found a way to monetize multiple revenue streams. There's so many angles that you could cut that from. And so whatever that thing is for you that you're desiring and wanting and like really fighting hard to achieve, like go find 5 people, 3 people, a realistic number of people that are doing or seem to have already achieved that today. And I know this is going to sound like absolutely ridiculous, but the power of a cold DM when you're not pitching a sales pitch, you don't want to sell a product, human connection. Hey, and this is no joke. I did this 2 days ago to someone that I have no connection to. We're on LinkedIn, but we're not connected. I don't know this person at all. I'm like, wow, I'm very inspired by what you're posting, how you're operating your career. Your career growth is wildly impressive from what I can see and what you share. This is a cold DM. I literally said it in the DM. This is a cold DM. Could we do coffee? I'll buy you coffee, virtual coffee, whatever you're down for. Can we do that? Is that cool? Is this a ridiculous ask? Within 5 minutes, this person was like, yes, Friday, 10 a.m. So I'm meeting with this person tomorrow and we're going to literally do career mapping. So even I am still doing career mapping. It's such a powerful exercise to look outward at others who have achieved things you want to achieve, are working the day job you would love to do, whatever it is, and have a conversation with them. There are so many tools online for types of questions that you can ask. Specifically, if you want to run systematized career mapping conversations where you have a core list of 6 questions and you ask those same 6 questions to each person you chat with. There are so many tools. Google it. I will not be the expert for what those 6 questions are, but Google it, 6 career mapping questions. There's so many and they're all really powerful. Figure out which questions work best for you. I think that it's not a one size fits all on how you approach career mapping, but I can say that I didn't do it 3 years ago. I started doing it 3 years ago. I feel like it has made a very tangible change in how I approach my career and how I actually take a step back and look at. Everyone assumes there's one career path. In order to be successful, I must director, VP, CMO, whatever that looks like for you. It wasn't until 3 years ago where I was like, oh, actually, it's quite nice. We have far more options than that today. Maybe 20 years ago, that is what success looked like or how people understood success to be. Success to me looks a lot different. And so career mapping is a huge lever to unlock how you actually achieve that for yourself.
That is such great golden advice. And also goes back to your recommendation earlier around surround your people, find your people and surround yourself with them.
I think so. And I think it's important to surround yourself with your tribe. But within that tribe, I think it's so important, find people that agree with you, that you respect, and people that disagree with you, that you respect, right? There is this huge foundational element of disagree and commit where there are so many people that I would consider in my tribe that are oh, you shouldn't make that career move. I wouldn't recommend that. And I'm oh, cool, say more. Let me know why, right? It helps you get a more objective view on what you're doing, what their thoughts are, what their pushback is, so that you can actually process that maybe career move or that decision or that campaign. I do it for every aspect of my day with their lens in mind too. I think it's such a powerful, underrated exercise to do.
All right, Kaylee, thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom and your stories. I so appreciate you and respect you and your grind and your vulnerability so much. So thank you.
Hannah, I can't say it. I can't reciprocate all my feelings. I'm I respect the heck out of you. You're such a powerhouse leader. I loved you from the minute I met you when you were at Mad Kudu. Just so glad that this career has taken us to where we can still do things like this and collaborate with each other in this cool way. So I'm thank you from the bottom of my heart for even asking me to join this wild ride. This has been a good session.
Good. I'm so glad. And I know it'll be great for everybody listening too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you walk away with something empowering that you can take into your own leadership journey. Are you a high-performing executive looking to take your career to the next level? Or maybe you're an emerging leader who wants to develop the skills you need to advance in your role and show up authentically. Or maybe you're experiencing burnout and struggling to find a better work-life balance. Whatever your situation is, one-on-one coaching can help you achieve your personal and professional goals. If you're interested in experiencing the power of coaching for yourself, head on over to hypehousecoaching.com/start coaching now, where you can set up a one-on-one leadership and executive coaching intro session for free. Remember, the only hype that really matters is the hype within.